I'm with any of my associations. You guys just are fun. You make it light. You just don't make it a boring day. And I want to thank you guys for that. I know you guys always come with great questions and things like that. I have already been told that if we want to skip the break, we can skip the break and we can power through the Q&A. So do we have a lot of people really wanting to do that? Okay, that's fine. If we're prepared for that, then you guys are going to pee on your own time and we're just powering through, okay? And I'll have to go, Michael, it's your turn. I gotta go. So that might happen. But just please don't forget, if you do leave early, please sign out so that I can modify the hours for today. The sign out sheet is out there with Shelby at one of the tables directly to the right. So if you leave before I dismiss you, which is before Q&A is over, please sign out. That's my only thing that I ask. Do you guys want me to leave the QR code up a little longer? Okay, I will leave it up a little bit longer. And Mike and I will stick around. So for some reason, we had a line this morning. It's like you guys waited till day 3 to ask all the questions, and none of them were easy, okay? You're supposed to do that on day 1 when I'm like real fresh. I'm pretty stale today, okay? Last night, my husband was like, I'll make dinner again. And I was like, good, because I don't have it in me. And then he was like, is it a cookie kind of night? And I was like, yeah, I love you. I'm like, you know what? So then we had some warm cookies, and then my child used me as a jungle gym. So, he was like rolling over my head, and then we blew up the bounce house that's in our living room. And it sounds like we have a big house. It's not. It takes up the whole living room. So he's kind of jumping from the couch to the bounce house and back and forth. And at one point last night, I'm like, can you go to bed, child? Because he's now in the phase where we like to undress in the middle of the night. And then he like just does a dance in his bed. And then he like lays down and he passes out. So last night he just would, and then he kept putting his clothes back on, taking them back off. And I'm like, can you go to bed? Like, mommy's tired. And I had to go in at one point, and he goes, I don't want to go to sleep. I want to hang out with you. And I'm like, tomorrow. We can hang out tomorrow, but not tonight. We have to go to bed. And so, keeps it interesting. You guys keep it interesting during the day, and then I have Marshall and my husband to keep it interesting after hours, Can I take this down now? Okay, it's gone. And we'll put it up again if you need it. But you guys are always like, I scanned it. Okay, so audit and use of probation funds. Okay, it's up there. How many of you heard from your probation departments that I talked to them in March? Have any of them come back and asked you guys questions? Okay, not as many hands as I was expecting. So I just want to prepare you. I'm going to be talking to community corrections in November. So you might get more people in your office asking more questions, which I feel is a good thing. Okay, because what I'm trying to do, I don't know why I'm holding this. I'm going to put this down. Okay. So I just want to say that I think that it's just like any other department. You guys are reviewing and certifying the claims, okay? It makes it look like you guys are the ones saying you can't do this with your money. That's how it comes off to every other department, okay? I am trying, as I'm getting my foot in the door with these other departments so that we can have these conversations, they're being made aware that you have to have certain items to certify a claim. I'm also walking them through what their funds can be used for. So it's not the auditor saying you can't use your money for this fund. I'm showing them where you guys are coming from and what you guys have to verify it against, okay? So my hope from all of this is that they see what you guys are now having to do, because that's part of my presentations. I talk to them about the receipting process. I talk to them about claims. I talk to them about turning over their report of collections, because how many of you have probation departments that are collecting user fees? A lot, okay? When it's not done correctly, that makes your guys' job harder, treasurer's job harder, it's more difficult. So we're just trying to inform them of, hey, you can do this. However, this is what you need to do, and make sure that you have the proper procedures and steps in place. So they were very receptive, and that's why I think I was invited back in November, or they invited me back to gang up on me with community corrections. I have no idea yet, but they seemed really excited to have me, and I was like, okay, we'll go. But I'm going to be talking to them about Senate Bill 92 too. So I don't know if they're going to like me or dislike me after that. But you guys might have more questions in November. But I just wanted to make you aware of that. I'm really trying so that you guys don't feel like you have to argue so many different things and tell them why something is not an allowable use of the fund, okay? So I'm on your guys' team. We're going to figure it out, okay? So do you remember last fall when we talked about probation funds and how many funds you should have on your ledgers? Does anyone remember how many funds you should have? 4, yes. I have nothing to give you. There's free pens out there. I'm going to do what Scotty does. You can get something free out there if you'd like. But no, there should be 4 funds. And I do know that I did ruffle some feathers at the probation conference because some of them are like, we only have 2 funds. And in the front of the room, I said, that's a problem. And so we had to then discuss that after the fact. And I know I've already been in conversations with some counties about what to do, but I do plan on covering this in this presentation so that you guys have a game plan for how to move forward if you only have 2 funds, okay? So some of the most common questions we get are, how many funds are there? We know that there's 4. Why are administrative and user fees in separate funds? Where do the fees come from? What can the funds be used for? That's probably our most common question. And I know some of them are currently starting their budgets, so they've been reaching out to me to ask, like, can I budget for this out of user fees and things like that. So I hope that with me opening the communication between me and them, that maybe they will not go to you guys. Maybe it's taking a little bit off of you, but I'm trying to educate them on the forefront so that when they're budgeting and trying to pay things out of these funds, we kind of nip that in the bud if it's allowable or not, and so that you guys, it's not coming to you as often. What if the county does not have the correct funds? So that's how I'm going to end my presentation today. So we already know there's 4 funds. Adult Probation Administrative Fund, the 2000, Juvenile Probation Administrative Fund, 2050, Supplemental Adult Probation Services Fund, 2100, and Supplemental Juvenile Probation Services, 2150. So I wanted to bring up 36 to 16.56, okay? This section of statute really, it requires that administrative fees be used first to pay for the salary increases required under 36 to 16.5 and 11.13.1.8. So that's adult and juvenile. So the amount of these fees collected that exceed the amount required to pay for these salary increases may then be used for supplementing probation services. So I have a lot of people saying, why did we go from having 2 funds to having 4 funds? This statute is the reason, and I believe that this statute, let me see what year this took effect. So this all came out in a memo from 2003. A lot of us weren't here for this memo. So if you guys inherited records that didn't have all 4 funds, you didn't know. You came into office, you have the funds that you thought you were supposed to have until probably last fall. You look like I picked a fight, and I was like, nope, you need more funds. But you know why this came to our attention is because last year there was a request during session of how many counties have these funds and what are they using those funds for? Oh, well, we got them the information, and then as Ricky and I were reviewing it before we gave it to Paul so he could hand it off, we noticed that either their county's not using the appropriate fund numbers, They only have the supplemental funds. They don't have the administrative funds. There was some confusion when we were looking at it. So it was really hard for us to say, here's very clear and concise information to answer your questions, because not everyone's doing it right. But it makes sense. This was from a memo 23 years ago. You guys aren't gonna know. So you just inherited records and you move forward, okay? So people are always like, why though do we have to? Because of this statute saying that you have to first pay for the salaries and the increases, then you can use it to supplement probation services. That's really saying we need more funds because administrative can only be used for salaries. Supplemental can be to supplement, pay for more salaries, or supplement the probation services programs, okay? So this is kind of the reason why. This is why 2 funds became 4 funds, because statute changed and restricted uses of some of the funds. And again, you guys wouldn't know that. So how many of you, and you don't have to raise your hand, but I want you to think that if you do have only 2 funds right now, if you have 2 administrative funds, those are super restrictive funds because you put all the money in administrative and you're saying it can only be used for salaries. However, if you have 2 funds and they're just supplemental funds, that is a less restrictive fund because it's for salaries and supplementing the probation programs. So it's very important why you need to separate those monies. And then we're going to talk about, so I'm trying to get to like why we need to do this, because this was one of the things that I hammered into the probation officers that day. I said, if you are trying to support your programs, but you only have administrative funds, you're not spending the fund appropriately. That's only for salaries. If you have all 4 funds, you're spending salaries out of administrative, but the supplemental allow you to supplement more salaries, and if you have any excess left over, you can pay to supplement the programs. And that is kind of the gray area still, is how do I supplement the programs? Okay, so we can discuss that more as we get there, okay? But this is why we have 4 funds instead of 2. So it's something that happened 23 years ago. Now we know. Okay, that didn't work. Hold on. Next slide. Okay, so now let's talk about the probation fees. And I know that you guys sit down and read Indiana code all the time, so I'm not going to read this to you. But I wanted you to have it as a resource because there could be probation departments that weren't able to attend, don't have my PowerPoint slides, or maybe they just weren't able to come to the presentation, or they didn't hear it the first time. So whenever they are asking about the difference in the fees that are collected, this is where this statute tells you. So 3538.21, it's a very long section of statute. I'm going to reference it several times when I'm talking about adult probation services, okay? Right now we're just in C. So in section C2 is referring to a 3% administrative fee kept from the probation fees for the clerk. It is to be receipted into the perpetuation fund 1119, or as auditor, you can request for it to go into the general fund, okay? This is something that probably was set up a long time ago. So how many of you actually get the 3% from the administrative fee into the general fund? Probably not a lot of you. The clerks probably have that 3% going into 1119. Neither of them is wrong. Both are right. It just depends what your county decided to do, okay? So I just want to point that out because this section of statute gives the option to the county where they want to put that 3%, okay? So that's of the administrative fee that's kept. But this is just for the administration of pushing the paperwork through, okay? This 3% is not the percent we're talking about that goes into the administrative fund. I want to make that very clear. C of this statute, so this, because people, I think that's the biggest misconception. They're like, well, this 3% should be going into my adult administrative fund. No, this is talking about the administrative fee at the time that they're collecting and they're pushing it through. This is not the administrative portion that goes to pay salaries, okay? So this is a fee. We call it an administrative fee because it's administering this and getting the paperwork to go through, okay? In the same statute, you want to go down to D. D is where it starts to get, okay, now we're talking about the money that's going into the adult probation, administrative fund, and the supplemental fund. So within this very long statute, we talk about so many different fees and they sound exactly the same, but they are very different and where they go is very important, okay? So in 3538.21D, we start talking about the adult probation fees. These are the fees that are collected from those users when they are coming in for probation, okay? D, I'm talking about what's going into your administrative funds and your supplemental funds, okay? So everything in blue, those are the user fees. Yes, I had to go back through my memory because I made this presentation 2 weeks ago. Okay, the blue that's highlighted, and I don't know if it showed up on your PowerPoints. It might not have because I had to print to black and white, so I apologize. But number 1, number 2, and number 3, and number 4 are all user fees that are collected. So our user fees go into the supplemental. Supplemental is what houses our user fees because that's the less restrictive fund. But number 5 is talking about the administrative fee. The administrative fee is what has been designated to go into the administrative fund for adult probation, okay? So I thought in color coding this, it would kind of make it easier. Sorry it didn't come through on your PowerPoint slides. So, does anyone have questions on that? Because we're gonna kind of keep going, and I kept all blue in this is user fees, and all purple in this is administrative fees. Okay, I try to keep my color coding the same. To continue on with adult probation fees, because there are a lot of fees that are collected, the blue, so 1, 2, and 3, those are still user fees. So it's either you collect what's in D, you collect what's in E. It's an or. You collect one or the other, okay? Based off of what the conditions of the probation are, okay? So you're looking at D and E. The blue on this section are user fees. Those go into our supplemental. Number 4 in E is administrative. Administrative goes into your administrative probation funds. We're only talking about adult right now. Okay? I want to say juvenile is very, very, very similar. They're written similarly. They have the same type of probation fees. It's just within a different section of statute. That's why I wanted to point them out to you, okay? So now we're still talking in the same vein of fees, but I've switched from adult to juvenile, okay? So juvenile probation fees. Very similar in the way that it's worded. 1 and 2 are user fees. 3 is the administrative fee. That is going to go into our juvenile administrative fund, okay, to support those salary increases. And I forgot to highlight that. Oh, no. Juvenile is set up a little bit different. So I want to point out in juvenile, you remember how we talked about the administrative fee for administering and collecting the payment, but it's not administrative fee? How confusing is that? I love statute. Okay, 3142(1)(b) is just like the administrative fee that is collected for adult. However, this is talking about the administrative fee for administering it. So it's still the same 3% that's grabbed off the top by the clerk. It could be put in clerk's perpetuation fund or go to county general. However you guys determine that locally, okay? I'm not saying go back and start a fight if you're not getting the money in general fund. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying if it's going to your general fund, that's right. If it's going to the clerk's perpetuation fund, that is also right, okay? Either one that you decide, it's not both. We don't split it, we don't split it, one of you gets it, okay? And that's where it goes within the funds. But juvenile has the exact same provisions. So whenever you think of probation, I wanted to show you and mirror them to you so you can see that they're very similar. They have similar language, but they're slightly different, okay? So, do we have any questions on fees? Yes.
So say you've been putting your fee in the clerk's perpetual, and now that fund is getting a pretty hefty balance. Can you change to start putting it into the general fund? Or is it one forever?
You can change. I'm not going to tell you to go back and do that. I'm going to tell you to have a discussion with your clerk. Because remember, the clerks, they don't have a lot of funds where, and most of you guys, how many of you use clerk's perpetuation and we budget it? We budget it for a lot of things, okay? If you do have a hefty balance, it's maybe worth considering. However, it's not something I'm saying you have to go back and change. I'm just telling you it can go in that fund or general fund, okay? So if you do have a large balance, maybe you could think about it. I'm not going to tell you to go back and do it. So that's your guys' decision. I saw another hand. I think that was your question. Okay, hold on. I'll come and do that.
We have funds that are the user funds, 2,500, and
So your 2,500 funds, we're talking about your user fee funds, where you collect those fees. We're specifically talking about probation in this sense. For whenever they come in for probation and they collect the fees, this is the these are the ones I'm talking about, not the other fees that are set up in statute, okay? So that's a whole different conversation of different fees that are collected, okay? That's a good clarifying option.
Okay, so this is the auditor's authority. It's not council, it's not clerk, it's not done by an ordinance? Am I?
Sorry, Stacy.
Statute to me doesn't give the auditor authority. Mike can stand there and read it. It sounds like it's a decision of the county. I don't know how it was decided. Is anyone aware of how this decision happened? It was years ago that this statute came into effect. So really, I don't know if anyone can say, yeah, we had an ordinance or resolution to decide where that money went, because statute gives you the option. I don't know, Mike, whenever you're reading this section of statute, if you read all of it very quickly.
No pressure.
No pressure. As he reads, we've had this discussion so many times and I've read it, but I don't think it gives the clerk or the auditor the authority to make the decision.
Yeah, I would expect that it's the commissioners who are making the decision in terms of whether or not that 3% to defray the administrative costs would be something that's allowed in that particular county. That's the way I read that. But I would want a minute to look back at whether or not there's been previous guidance on the process for making that choice, if that's the question, if I'm understanding it correctly.
I think that is Deb's question. I know Shelley has one.
This is a may, not a shall.
No, it's a may.
Right, so we can't look at our judges and say, we're going to do this.
No.
Which would be the problem in Noble County.
Well, I think it would be the problem everywhere.
I
Yeah.
mean, everything in probation is judicial. So we have 3 people that tell us what they're going to do. I mean, it's not a shall. So I mean, if it was a shall, that would be great.
So, I mean, Mike, I don't know your thoughts on it, but again, it goes back to the same question. If your clerk's perpetuation fund balances are hefty, would it be considering moving where that 3% goes? But then the offset of that is if they're doing majority, being courts, doing a majority of administering this, then most of the costs are there in the courts for the administration of these fees. Like, how much administrative is it for the auditor's office would be my argument to that. See what I'm saying? So it's, again, I don't know who gives the authority, and we can look back, Deborah, and see if we can find that. I don't know if we've given guidance on it since it is a may and not a shall. So we can do some more research on that just to kind of see if we've ever said anything. But any other questions before I move on to the funds themselves? Oh.
So the clerk's perpetual fund, where can I find what they can spend that money on? Because maybe if my balances are growing, maybe there's things that we're budgeting for elsewhere that could be being used by those funds in the perpetual.
Here, let me give you, I don't know the statute off the top of my head, but I'm going to pull up the chart of accounts so that you can have it. I don't have my printout right here with me. It's very clear. There's only 3 items. That's why 119, 33, 37, 52. So if we're doing what we did yesterday, 33, 37, 52. The clerk may use the money in the fund for the following purposes: the preservation of records, the improvement of record-keeping systems and equipment, and the operation of case management systems. It's very specific. And so whenever we talk about this at the clerk's conference, that is all that it can be used for. It's not like the recorder's perpetuation fund. There is no sworn statement. They cannot use them for operational costs. They can only use it for these 3 things. So if they have a balance, it's worth having a conversation of the clerk needs to consider if we really need to do improvements to record-keeping systems, case management, things to that effect to get things updated, okay? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So it does. I'm not going to agree nor disagree. However, with case management systems, there needs to be backups. Servers are expensive. Things like that need to be made available. So I understand, okay? I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm also not agreeing. That is something at the local level, and I'm not going to step into the clerk's domain while I'm being recorded. Because I have to see them in June, and I love them just as much as I love all of you, okay? So,
Stacy, does that apply only to court records?
yes, most of the time it is just court records. Okay, now, back to probation fees. We digress. We had a side quest. We're back now. Okay, so any more question on fees? We understand there's a lot of fees that can go into these 4 funds. I color-coded it. I showed you guys where the fees go. Now we're going to talk about the funds, okay? This is the fun part. You guys love talking about funds. This just tells me next time you guys want to talk about other funds, like Clerk's Perpetuation Fund. So, okay, for funds, we're first going to talk about adult probation, administrative, and then go to supplemental. I'm going to do adult, then I'm going to do juvenile, because they really just mirror each other, okay? So adult probation, you should have fund 2,000. This is for the administrative fee that's collected. It's used to supplement the salaries of probation officers. So this is the more restrictive fund. So if we would come into audit, we would review those claims. I would only expect you to see payroll being paid out of the administrative funds for salaries for those individuals that are probation officers. I know that some counties, again, I don't know how much money is really running through your administrative funds, okay? But depending on how many people you have in probation, my question to you is, I don't feel it's enough money to shoulder all of the probation budget. Am I right in thinking that? It's not enough money. It supplements salary increases. So how many of you actually have to budget for probation officers out of general fund or another fund? Yeah. So you probably use your administrative to budget sometimes a salary increase or the difference. Is that what's happening? Yeah, okay. So my thoughts were correct, because after talking with some of the probation officers, that's what it sounded like. Appropriation is required, okay? It is for all of these. There's none of these 4 funds allow you to spend without appropriation, okay? So they have to have appropriation by council. Claims have to go through your office. There is no difference here. It is the fund that is held on your guys' ledgers. It's nothing like sheriff commissary or anything like that. Appropriation is required. I gave you the statutory reference, but in the previous slides, I showed you the uses, okay? Now, supplemental, it's in the 2100. Oh, yeah.
Can you pay an entire salary out of this or just part of a salary?
You could.
That's the big fight our probation has.
You could. My argument is, can it really support someone's full salary? Because this is the fear that I have. Again, I do this for you guys. I do this for clerks. I do this for anyone who asks this question. When probation came and they asked me the exact same question, because you know, you guys are aware what's happening. I'm going to tell you and you're going to go, that's what's happening. Council is saying, you guys have a lot of money in this fund in some counties. We're pushing the entire budget for salaries there. What happens if your revenues go down? There's less people in probation. You're getting less administrative fees. It might not be a long-term solution to maintain this. So you're shifting your budget to a fund if you put someone's whole salary there and you don't, like, you project revenue you're going to get, but what happens if you don't end up getting and they become incarcerated? So they're in probation for now, you're getting fees. However, they now are incarcerated, you're now not getting that revenue. What if that continues to happen? The revenue in that fund will continue to go down. Will it actually support people long term? Because some of the arguments I've heard our probation is they're shifting the full budget to these 2 funds. And to me, these 2 funds aren't something that's self-sustaining. That's a concern for me. Unfortunately, whenever we're preparing budgets, and I mean you guys at the county level, you aren't the ones saying, yes, this will work. Someone else is making that decision. It's council that's making that decision. They need to be informed and be aware that this isn't one where you're going to constantly get X number of dollars every single year. It's going to fluctuate. It's a possibility it continues to increase, but there's a possibility also it continues to decrease. So I don't know if I answered your question, but any salary, all of their salary, increase in salary, that would all be an appropriate use of the fund. They will argue with that because statute does read that way, yes. So a lot of people are saying, well, I just want the increase. However much we have in the fund, I want to increase for X number of people. However, same thing. What if revenue goes down? There are no increases. Yeah. They come to you and ask how much is in the fund so that you can provide an increase. But unfortunately, that increase isn't going to probably be every single year, depending on how much. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to. What's the lowest number we have in one of these funds? Like, I don't know what. Whenever I looked at the data, you guys were all over the place because I couldn't tell. But it makes sense because of county size and how many of you actually have huge probation programs. Some of you only have like 2-3 probation officers. Some of you can have like up to 20, 30, something like that. It just kind of depends how your probation is set up to where if a fund like this could sustain an increase for 3 or 4 people, that makes sense. But if you're looking at sustaining increases for 15 to 30, that's not going to happen in some of the counties. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And no, I know. And I will say that whenever it comes to probation funds and things like that, there has been conversations Mike and I have been in to where the Supreme Court, there is a ruling for how this is specific, especially for raises for, is it probation officers? For raises and the increases, and you can't decrease their salaries, things to that effect. We've been in multiple conversations regarding that. And so again, we talk with them, we do work with them, we try and, again, we're telling you one thing, we want to make sure that there's not something that's being counterproductive and then we're starting a fight at the county level. That's what we don't want to happen. Sometimes it happens, and if it does, Mike and I are more than welcome to have discussions with judges because maybe we're not getting it, and that's totally fine. So if I want to say that if there is something that comes up regarding that, please refer them to us. We talk to judges all the time, not just in bad situations, but also then they just have questions. We're a resource for them as well. So just wanted to say that.
Can it be used for administrative assistance?
I think it has to, are they a probation officer? Like classified as a probation officer? Mike, I would say no to that.
I think the answer is no. I think that's right. But I would want to understand exactly what we're talking about before giving a 100% firm
Yeah.
answer. But I think that's right.
Off the cuff, a no. However, I know that some, that's the thing. Probation, community corrections, they all have these diverse classifications of people and what they call them and what their job responsibilities are. So Judy, to really answer, I would need to know every single fact, but just knowing it's maybe administrative and not technically a probation officer, I'm gonna say no. But if I had more information, and they do, some are classified as probation officers, however, they do administrative duties. I have seen that. So then I would say they fit in this category, possibly. Okay. Yes. 1 second. He's coming. He doesn't run as fast as I do. If he had heels on, he would. I believe that.
You keep saying salaries. What about FICA? What about in-purse?
I would consider benefits allowable. Do you mind?
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you like how I did you? Gave him like a moment to think about it. And I think probation did ask that as well because, again, this is now just such a hot topic because general fund budgets are being cut. So people are looking elsewhere to fund things. This is why this has become such a hot topic. So, okay. Have I talked about supplemental? I don't feel that I have. Okay, I'm just going to talk about it, and if I have, you guys be like, we already talked about it. Okay, supplemental 2100, this is their user fees, okay? Supplement probation services and supplement salaries. So, in theory, my brain is saying your administrative fund should probably have less money in it than your supplemental. And we're just talking about adult or juvenile, either case, okay? Your administrative probably has less. You're probably going to use that for salaries, whether it's increases, all of them, any benefits, things like that would fall in that vein. Okay, if we've already budgeted all of our administrative, now we're looking at what we can spend our supplemental on. This is where the probation officers and probably you guys butt heads most of the time. I'm just guessing. I've gotten some of these emails because their questions are, well, some of it is being used to pay salaries because I don't have enough at administrative. So I'm using some of this to pay salaries. However, there's some that's left over. And whenever we read the words to supplement probation services, that's broad. How can that be interpreted? From a State Board of Accounts perspective, I want to talk about if we're auditing a claim. My thing that I always ask if it's something that I'm having a hard time connecting the dots with, they ask me like, I want to buy candy. Why? What are you using the candy for? Is it for you to snack on? Are you giving it to probation when they come in? Is it in a candy dish? Is it incentives? Why are we buying candy? Or why are we buying sandwiches? Or donuts? Or something? Those are my very first questions, because how is it supplementing probation services? And I always have, and then there's a pause, especially if you have this conversation in person, because I'm just asking questions. And then I just say, these are user fees. People that are in probation are paying these fees. How is it benefiting that population of people paying for those user fees? If it's candy that it's for the office, but we don't give to probationers, that doesn't seem allowable to me. If it's candy that whenever they come in, we just want them to like feel comfortable, have a little snacky snack, I don't know. That's stretching it for me, but I could see it in a way, or if you're using it as incentives, like you give them giant handfuls of candy. I now question about their dental hygiene, but you know, mother here, that's too much candy. Let's give them like bananas, no. But no, it's just like, that's the questions that I'm going to ask. I don't feel it's outside of your guys' realm either to understand. So if you guys receive a claim that doesn't give you enough information and it doesn't seem like it's an allowable use of the fund, ask the questions. You're allowed to, because you have to say if it's an appropriate use of funds. If you do not have enough information, it could look like a personal expense. And that's what I tell them whenever we speak to them. I'm like, you have to document it on the claim. What on earth is it being used for? Okay? So, and if for some reason you're not making any headway and they're still wanting to submit the claim, you can loop me and Mike into an email with them. I'll have a conversation with them. I don't have a problem, because really what it comes down into is, if you guys don't feel it's an appropriate use of funds, you can't hold that claim. You can decide not to certify it. You can document you don't believe it's an appropriate use of funds, and you can have commissioners determine if they want to pay for it. You can totally do that. That's something that you can do. That's within your power. You do not have to certify the claim. You can't withhold it, but you don't have to certify it, okay? And if commissioners say they want to pay it, you pay it, but you have documentation showing why it's not an appropriate use of funds, okay? Especially if you have the documentation showing where you're asking for more information and it's not being given to you, and it doesn't seem like it really benefits that population. Because the second I say, how does it benefit the population that's paying the fee? This is just like those user fee funds that we brought up a minute ago. They pay fees into a program for user fees for the program. How does it benefit the population paying the fee? If you can't make that connection, then you are allowed to ask the question. That's allowed. Totally doable. Okay, requires appropriation and statutory reference. It's the same one, because remember, this is a very, very long statute. Okay, and I wanted to show you where it shows what the fund can be used for. So in 353821F is where you're going to see it says, shall appropriate money from the county supplemental adult probation services fund. And under 2, it says to supplement the salaries of probation officers in accordance with the schedule adopted by the county fiscal body under that. But it says to supplement adult probation services. So this is where we draw our uses of the supplemental fund, okay? So you have to look at 2, and then you have to look at that first underlined section to supplement adult probation services, okay? Questions on this? No? I explained it so well, and you're like, yeah, I know what's allowed now. No claims getting past me. Okay. Okay, juvenile. Very, very similar. So we'll go through this rather quickly. 2050, the administrative fee for juvenile. We've already looked at where that fee comes from. Supplement the salaries of probation officers, just like adult, but this is for juvenile. Appropriation is required, and your statutory reference is in 3142. The supplemental fund. It's in 2150s where you should be holding the money. This is for your user fees, and it's to supplement probation services and to supplement salaries for probation officers. Okay, we're looking at a mirror. One's just adult, one's just juvenile. We just need to make sure we're putting the adult fees in the adult funds, juvenile fees in the juvenile funds. Appropriation is required in 3142. And in 3142 1C, supplemental, what the uses are for. So the fiscal body of the county shall appropriate the money. May be used, this one is worded a little bit better than the adult one. It says may be used for supplementing probation services and to supplement the salaries of probation officers in accordance with 31315. Okay? So that one's more clear than the adult one, but they are saying the exact same thing. This one just reads better. Okay. So we've already went through in depth what the funds can be used for. I just wanted to put it on a slide to kind of make it easier. If it's just administrative, the salaries. If it's supplemental, it can be used to supplement the program or salaries. Okay? What if the county does not have the correct funds? Okay, I wanted to include this slide. This is my last one, and we can talk about this a little in depthly if you'd like. But if you have like more, the really nitty gritty, like please don't ask me, what do I do? This is what I have because I need to look at your funds ledger, okay? I'm more than happy to do that offline whenever you guys send me the funds ledger and you show me what funds you're putting money into. And if you only have 2 of those funds, how to make 4 funds, we need to do on a case-by-case basis because some of you guys have just administrative, some of you just have supplemental. I want to say there's one county that just randomly has adult, like administrative general and supplemental general. I want to say there's a county that looks like that, but I don't remember because I've slept since 2 years ago whenever we were looking at the information. So depending on what funds you do have, these are your next steps. If you have 4 funds, you're good to go. Just make sure you're using the money appropriately, okay? No argument here. If you only have 2 funds, then we need to figure out, are we putting everything in the right funds? So are we putting everything that you're collecting, administrative and user, into one fund? Or are you just now putting your user fees into those funds? And where are your administrative funds going? So that's something that before you guys talk to me, I would say you need to figure out what's going in those funds. Because if you come to me and you say, I only have 2 funds, and I'm going to say, okay, what are you putting in there? And you can't tell me, yes, I'm putting administrative and user fees in those funds. Or you go, I don't know. It could be one of them or it could be the other one. I'm going to have to do more research. And I'm going to say, I need you to be for certain what you're putting in those funds because it really depends what we do next, okay? And I'm just going to give some examples. I think the one that's probably happening the most is you have an administrative fund or you have a supplemental fund. Doesn't matter what it's named, but you're putting everything into those. And you've confirmed the fees and what revenue's in it. Then you say, how do I separate them? That's a really great question, because some probation officers are saying, I want to separate it right now. Well, that's really hard to do in May. So, but they're going, I want to go back all these years ago, and I want to separate all the revenues and pull them into separate funds. And the thing that I'm going to tell you guys is, if that's what's being proposed, how do you know you haven't spent them 10 years ago? You don't know. So realistically, the solution I've given to, I want to say 2 or 3 counties, I believe, that have asked, who've confirmed what's going into it, I say to them, I say, realistically, you can probably go back and do 2025, and in 26, you create a new fund, whether it's administrative or supplemental, whichever one that you don't have, you create a new fund, and you have documentation for transferring that revenue into that new fund. And for this example, we're just going to say supplemental. Say you have a supplemental fund, you're putting everything in there. You have documentation, if you work with your probation office, to say, these are the administrative fees I need to pull out. Before you do that, my question is going to be to you, the amount of fees and revenue that you want to pull into that new fund to create that administrative fund, what were the expenses that you spent on out of administrative fees last year? Because if you can say, well, I spent more than what I collected, I'm going to tell you, I don't know if you can say for certain that money's still in there, because it's all commingled, okay? That's the thing I'm going to throw back at you. Can you tell me that you didn't spend all of that? You're going to go, I don't know, because I don't know either. So you have to make that justification if you have enough revenue to move to that fund. And what's the justification for moving it? Okay? Sounds like a nightmare. This is my other proposition. You start for 2026. You only go back 5 months, because probation can go pull you reports. You can move those fees, you can move expenses, and you can make your life easier because you're working in the current year, okay? Going back and moving something and trying to do it in the current year, that gets messy, especially if you you can't confirm anything. It comes more of a bookkeeping nightmare, okay? Some probation offices want to do that. They're coming to the auditors and saying, how do we do this? Some of them are saying, please don't move it until this year because we can do that. Some are asking if they can wait till 27 because they learned about it in March. Whenever some of them learned about it in March, they went right back and me and the auditor had a conversation, okay? But if you guys want to wait, you can. The only thing is, this is my hesitation to you guys. I've already said it once. Depending which fund you have, if you only have administrative and you're paying to support probation services, that automatically makes that not an allowable use of funds. If you have a supplemental fund, you're kind of good. So if there's a bright side, that's your bright side. You're okay. We can fix that. We can fix the other thing too, but it's more of a non-compliance issue, okay? So I would just want to say, if you are having difficulty with this, call me and Mike. This isn't a new conversation. I just need to have everything in front of me to make an informed decision to help you guys move forward, okay? Because I don't want to give you the wrong guidance. You have 8 minutes until Mike comes up and talks about conflict of interest. So what are your questions? None? You guys are just going, how many funds do I have? One moment. She's coming with the microphone.
Hi, thank you. So I was looking, I brought a schedule of balance of funds with me with where things for 2025.
Okay.
And Jerry Lynn and I are looking at this, and she pointed out that we have a fund 2250 that in 2025 there's no activity in it.
Well, that's a user fee fund, though.
Okay, so probation.
Well, did you say 2250?
2250, so 2250. And the fund description is probation/county user fee.
We need to figure out.
What that is.
We need to figure out that.
And
Yeah,
so-
because that's not one of mine. I feel like it's a user. It could be a user fee fund, or it could be this, but we need to verify the revenue that's going into it.
Okay.
Where's it coming from?
Okay. Or it only has a balance of $905, and there was no activity in 2025. So
Okay.
it was like Jerry Lynn said, like maybe this is something that we're not using anymore, or maybe they were trying to split out the fee that should be going to the clerk.
They could have been, maybe. I would recommend trying to dig into that a little
Yeah.
bit more, because it sounds like if it's maybe a dormant fund,
We don't.
what do we
need that
stop
in
collecting a
this.
fee for?
Yeah.
Who does it belong to? Because I will say that sometimes we're digressing. We're moving from probation fees to user fees. If you have stopped collecting user fees and you're no longer doing a program at the county, sometimes you guys want to declare it dormant and you want to move the money to general fund. However, those were user fees collected for a purpose. So anytime you guys ask me, I'm going to say, who paid into that? And do you have a program that supports another population to where you could spend the fund down instead of moving the money?
Okay.
Is what I would suggest. If it is actually a user fee fund, you're just going to have to dig, because sometimes your programs just stop. You have funds left over that users paid into. I'm not saying you have to give them back, but can we use them on another program?
Like a
currently?
similar project.
Similar with a similar population is what you want to look at.
All right. Thank you.
No, you guys just want to talk about conflict of interest? I figured. Okay. Mike, it's your turn. They don't want to take any breaks. They just want to keep powering through. So, okay. Thank you guys.